So again, today's gospel, John chapter 6, we're going to see this in our Sunday cycle. I actually looked ahead. It's going to be starting at the end of July into August. So I'm definitely going to preach on that when we get to that point there. But again, when we're moving along to the Acts of the Apostles, we kind of jumped a couple chapters into the end of chapter 7 into chapter 8. A very important event in Acts of the Apostles, the martyrdom of Stephen. So let's take a look at some of the things here. First of all, like I said before, the Acts of the Apostles is about the ministry of Jesus Christ continuing through the Acts of the Apostles. So as St. Luke wants to really draw out here, it begins this first reading with Stephen, again, kind of pointing a finger at his enemies here. You know, you stiff-necked people, uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always oppose the Holy Spirits, just like your ancestors did. You know, this reminds me of what Jesus did with the parable of the vineyard towards the end of the Gospels, where Jesus talks about this vineyard, and then there's servants who are taking care of it, and then the owner of the vineyard sends people to collect the produce, but the workers of the vineyard beat them up and stone them. You know, the idea was that those were the prophets. And then finally, he said, well, I'm going to send my son. And they end up killing the son as well. But Jesus, at the end of the gospel, at the end of that parable, points to the listeners who are the religious leaders and says, that the kingdom is going to be taken away from you and given to others. And so that's kind of what's happening here. Stephen's pointing out, you're just like the ancestors who killed the prophets. They don't like it. Eventually, then, we see this vision that Stephen has with Jesus and the Son of Man. Okay, more on that in just a second. But again, to draw out some of the similarities, at the end, Stephen says, Lord, receive my spirit, just like Jesus said on the cross. And then he says, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. Just like Jesus forgave, especially in Luke's gospel, Jesus forgiven those that executed him on the cross. You can see how Stephen is becoming another Christ, really, which is kind of really the call of all baptized, to be Christ to the world. I don't mean that in a cliche type of way, but really to take on the mind, the heart, and the attitude of Jesus Christ. Because we are, through our baptism, we are configured to the beloved Son, Jesus Christ. That's how we're entered into the life of the Trinity. It's because of our connectedness, to the bridegroom, Jesus Christ. And we see in this first reading, the first martyrdom in the church, the first one who really represents and images Christ. What happens to him? Unfortunately, the same fate that happened to Jesus. And that's why in Stephen's martyrdom, it's celebrated when? December 26th. Think of the honor of that as being bestowed upon him. The day after Christmas is St. Stephen's feast day, during the octave of the Christmas season. But again, this connectedness between Stephen and Christ. He sees Christ. He sees what awaits him. And he continues on in the mission. And that's where our focus needs to be. It needs to be on Christ when the world around us seems to want to persecute us and downplay us and just have this mentality, you're a follower of Christ. You're strange, or whatever type of persecution. Our minds and hearts are fixed on Jesus, whom we're supposed to represent and be to the world. So again, like I said, this is a really big moment in Acts of the Apostles, not only because of our first martyrdom of the one who really represents Christ to the world, but we're also introduced to another character that we're going to start to hear a lot of. His name was Saul. Eventually, he would be called Paul. St. Paul. St. Paul, who consented to the first Christian martyr, who allowed it to happen and gave his approval of it. We're going to see, just in case you don't know, we're going to see what happens to this figure very shortly. May God bless you.